We are joined right now by the executive director of the Morad Center for the Study of Sports Law and a professor of practice at Villanova University. He served as the Green Bay Packers VP from 1999 to 2008. He was also a former agent who repped NFL players. He is the host of the Business of Sports podcast. He is a contributor to SI, as well as some other things, so he is very busy. He is Andrew Brandt, and he is back. Andrew, good to have you on the show. How are you?
Jim, always a pleasure. Good to be back with you.
It's good to have you back here. Thank you very much, Andrew, for doing it. What do you say we cut right to the chase and go right to the plight of running backs and the running back market in the NFL? Has there ever been a worse time to be a running back than right now in that league, Andrew?
Certainly not for veteran running backs, and we can describe that as we want, but basically mid-career that are finished with their rookie contracts and are heading into what everyone else seems to get, which is strong veteran contracts at the height of their career. The problem for running backs is NFL teams do not believe the same age that is the height of the career for every other position is the height of the career for running back. And Jim, I think it really starts before the NFL. We have this 3-year eligibility rule to get into the NFL. You have to be 3 years removed from high school. For a quarterback, for offensive line, for defensive line, that's great. You know, you need that time to develop. But for running backs, those are prime earning years, age 19, 20, 21, or 18, 19, 20. And by the time you're 24, 25, you've used up your most productive earning years, and that's what we're finding out now.
Andrew Brandt joining us. So let me ask you this. Having said what you just said, is there any point in their career where running backs aren't getting jammed or squeezed financially?
The problem is the collective bargaining agreement mandates 4-year rookie contracts, 5-year for first-rounders like Saquon Barkley, and now we have franchise tags giving it a 6th year of team control. Saquon Barkley may never see free agency until he's 7 years in the NFL. It's unfortunate. You know, maybe the best thing for running back is to be undrafted. You can only do it. You can do a 3-year contract, have some success, and hit free agency at a very young age. But it's a bleak situation. And Jim, I'm guilty of this. I was with the Packers, and I had reservations about 2 friends of mine that were close to me and resisted big, strong second contracts, Dorsey Levens and Amon Green. And we see what happens. It's unfortunate. You see the Todd Gurley's, you see the Sean Alexanders, where second contracts went to pot, and that's what teams have learned.
We're talking to Andrew Brandt. I think those are 2 really good anecdotes and really good examples of what we're talking about here. So, Andrew, what about when Saquon cryptically tweets, "It is what it is"? I mean, that's a cliche to fit almost anything. But when he does it in that context, can you decode that for me? What does he mean by that, "It is what it is"?
Well, he's pissed. And, he felt like the negotiation game was not what he expected it to be. We don't have the intricacies of what went on between the Giants and him, but he's making $10 million on a franchise. That would be about 11.2 next year, so basically 21.5 if he did a 2-year deal. I'm guessing that's about where the Giants were, and I think he wants probably a minimum of 24, 25 over 2. And I just think he felt like and I believe this about the Raiders and Cowboys too, they were negotiating a deal to be turned down. They would rather rent than buy. They would rather date than marry when it comes to a veteran running back. In other words, they're happy paying $10 million, giving them the ball however many 100 times, using them up. But here's where I feel for Barkley and these other guys, Jim. If they're not getting a deal now, they're never getting a deal. Because they're only going to be a year older. They're only going to have a year more usage. And someone like Josh Jacobs, who led the league in rushing, it's not going uphill from there. So this is a plight, and I know we're just focusing on it now, but it's been going on a while.
Andrew Brandt joining us. In fact, you beat me to that point. I was going to say, what's got to be really discouraging is like Josh Jacobs. Andrew, he had an incredible year. He led the league in rushing. He said it to me on radio, wrote at the Super Bowl, I want to be a Raider. I want to be a Raider for life. But, I mean, if these guys don't get these long-term deals right now, does it even matter what they do next year? Is there any reason to believe that no matter what they do next year or going forward, that they're ever going to get that deal?
I don't see how they do. I mean, every position in football and every position in sports and every position in business and life, if you have significant productivity early in your career, you are creating future value later in your career. Think about everyone listening in their career. If they have productivity early on, they're going to create future value for themselves. In running back, if you have productivity early on, you're actually hurting your market value because of this idea of tread on the tire and usage, and maybe there's just not a lot of carries left in your body at age 26 and on. That's so unfortunate. And again, what we haven't talked about, I want to get it in before we go, Jim,
Sure.
is the tag.
Right. By the way, I was going there next. Absolutely. Let's get into that.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you're a quarterback, if you're an offensive lineman, you're going to have years after this tag. But a running back, you're not. You're not. You're just not. And the fact that Jacobs and Barkley are going to be 6 years, in the league with no sniff of free agency. Again, it's fine for other positions. You would hope that, I mean, the tag, when I was in the league, Jim, the tag was for Brett Favre. It was for Dan Marino. It was for John Elway. It was for Troy Aikman. You know, it was like, okay, let's keep these guys with their teams. But teams are smart. They're like, well, I'm going to use it on a kicker. I'm going to use it on a running back. And the tag has become much more onerous and a real weaponized than it was meant to be.
Andrew Brandt joining us. I was going to ask you about that. So what about the NFLPA? Are you not surprised that they haven't made it a greater priority to try to do something about that? And then short of that, what can running backs do? Unionize? I mean, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I've been critical, and full disclosure, I was contacted about that position. I did not have interest, and so I can say that. But I just think that when they get into bargaining, and they're interested in off-season being off, and they're interested in lessening commissioner power, and they're interested in this and that, franchise tag always seems to come up, but it seems to fall by the wayside when they get into the horse trading of this deal and that deal, and we'll give you this, and it never goes away. The one thing that I take issue with, because I've heard union people say this in the past, well, it only affects 10 players a year. No, it doesn't. Because every running back in the league is affected that these three guys didn't get deals. Because the market trickles down. And I used the franchise tag 50 times in my career at the Packers. I never used it. But I said, well, if we don't get a deal done, we got the tag. It's always in your back pocket. So the tag affects so many more players than the actual get the tag. I know that teams and people doing what I did for the Packers use it all the time to leverage against agents and players.
Andrew Brandt joining us, breaking it all down expertly. So before you go, you mentioned the Packers. Aaron Rodgers, Andrew, who you know very, very well, has made it pretty clear he does not want the Jets to be the subject of hard knocks. I mean, did the NFL pick the Jets for this, or did the league make the Jets do it? For those who don't know, exactly how does that process work?
There's a formula now. You have to have been out of the playoffs a couple of years, and anyway, it came down to 4 teams this year, and they picked the Jets, or they forced the Jets. Let me go back to the Packers. They would come up. This is before that formula, Jim. It would come up in my 10 years. Maybe it came up 3 or 4 times, and I would go into a meeting with our GM, and before I got to the word knock, it would say no. We are not doing that. It's a disruption, and we see zero benefit. We only see downside. I think teams see it the same way. what's the benefit? The benefit is, getting some airtime on TV. They get plenty of that. I don't know if it ever been a team, maybe the Lions, maybe another team in the past that sort of was cool with being on it. Jets don't seem to be. But that's how it works. These coaches and players are victims of routine, and that really upsets it.
No, I think you're right. I know what the league gets out of it. I don't know what the teams get out of it. I think the Lions did benefit from it, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, Andrew, before you go, if you don't mind, one of your favorite sayings is, there will be lawyers. And that's the case now at Northwestern with 8 former football players hiring an attorney over hazing within the program, the cost. Pat Fitzgerald, his job. There's more news coming out today. Pat. He also retained a law firm after he was fired. How do you view what's happened there over the past week or two, and how do you think that ultimately plays out?
Well, on the Fitzgerald side, he hired Winston and Strawn, one of the big-time firms in Chicago, and they've got an issue with Northwestern. I see that the positivity in terms of his case is, listen, he got a 2-week suspension, and somehow that turned into termination. And I know that Northwestern can say this came up and this came up and this came up, but they did a whole investigation by Northwestern's law firm, and they came up with 2 weeks. And now they're terminating him, so that's going to go for a while. I think that what the players are suing about is a culture. And this is a bigger story than Northwestern, bigger story than college football. It's kind of this culture of, domination of a player's schedule, of a player's indoctrination into the team, and how it's sort of the whole culture of machismo and football and hazing and sexual negativities. It's something that is probably going to go on for a while. I don't know how that's going to play in a courtroom, Jim. I do know that the Fitzgerald case, in my opinion, is a strong one.
Let me finally ask you this. You have a great newsletter, Andrew. I subscribe to it. I look forward to it every weekend. You cover the business of sports generally and not just football exclusively. Let me ask you about a topic you referenced this past Sunday. The New York Times outsourcing its sports department. What is your reaction to that? And then what's that mean to sports media overall and the business?
Yeah, thanks for that, Jim. People can subscribe at andrew-brandt.com. I enjoy putting it out every Sunday. This is the sign of the times, no pun intended. Its legacy media is not what it was. People get so many opportunities to get sports news and information, and they can choose it. I mean, you're an example of this. It's Jim Rome. It's Pat McAfee. It's Dan Patrick. It's brands that don't depend on legacy media. And we're in that age now. I try to be that myself, where I was with ESPN, but I'm still with Sports Illustrated, and I realize Sports Illustrated is not what it was, but I see value in that. I think what we're seeing is, it's not AI, but the New York Times bought The Athletic, and they basically outsourced their sports. And that's what we seem to be coming to. There's going to be a dividing line between some hard-hitting sports long-form journalism and then everything else. And it's unfortunate for legacy media, but this is not your father's or my father's sports media anymore. There are just too many options.
So what do you tell kids? Andrew, leave me with this thought. Like, I've got a son who just graduated from the University of Wisconsin who's getting into the media, not sports, but the media. We have another son who just graduated high school. You're right. They are entering a world that's very different than the world you and I entered into. What are we telling our young content creators / journos?
I have sons the exact same age, Jim, two boys just like you, and I'm telling them 2 things. Number one, do the things that what successful people do is do the things that others don't want to do.
Right.
And when I get to young people, they say, I want into sports, I want to work for a team, I want to be an agent. I'm like, that's not enough. What are you doing to make yourself different? Are you blogging? Are you podcasting? Are you writing? Are you giving me a sample of what you see different in what the Packers or the Chiefs or the Giants or the Eagles did about this contract? Number 2, and the same thing is don't be the try not to be like everyone else. Just find a little lane that you can dive into and show yourself different. Don't be the best, be the only. Do something that only you have special knowledge, and you got to make yourself different, because if you're in the pack, you can't stand out. You got to be different.
Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell to be the first to know when we do upload a new video.